Hello, I hope you're doing well today. My name is Ian Green, and I'm the musician for Music Dreams and also for Ian J. Green, two different artist profiles you can find wherever you stream your music. And today I'm going to be working on part 3 of Unit 8 of the Level 10 Harmony course as published and taught through the Royal Conservatory of Music. Today we're going to be speaking about chorale harmonization or Bach chorale writing, and also how to spot and use tonicization versus modulation. So these are pretty fancy words, but let me break them down a little bit. Tonicization also means secondary dominant chords. You can use secondary dominant seventh chords and occasionally, not often, but occasionally, secondary diminished seventh chords. More prominently, the secondary dominant seventh chord is used in this stylistic aspect of Baroque writing from the time of Bach. Now, tonicization occurs, of course, or secondary dominant chords occur within a phrase where we don't change key. What Mr. Bach does is he wants to change the sound and the quality of a certain progression, but what he also wants to do is highlight a special chord in a phrase, but without changing to that new key. So, if, for example, he would use the dominant of the dominant, or 5 of 5. Or he could go to the 5 of 4, or the dominant of the 2 chord, or something. But he'll still stay in the scale of the original key. Now, let's say we are in the scale of C major, nice and simple. But let's say we want to use the dominant chord, which is GBD, and then he tonicizes that by going 5 of 5. He'll do D F sharp AC, which is the dominant of 5, which is GBD, before he goes to 1 again. It really creates a nice quality, a nice sound. Now, something that's different from tonicization versus modulation, of course, is modulation also uses special accidentals, and we change the sound from one sound or one key to another. But the important thing is that modulation is a longer-term change of key. You actually change from one scale to another, and usually in Mr. Bach's music, there is a similarity to how he treats modulation. Whenever he switches from one key to the next with modulation, he uses and confirms a cadence in that new key, or he has the switch going to that new key, and then there's a cadence to confirm the new key before going on, either in staying in that new key or switching to something else. So in other words, the modulation is more of a lengthy part of the composition. Sometimes you might have a tonicization which turns into a modulation as well. You might have a 5 of 5 which then goes into the dominant key. But in order to really confirm that new key, there does have to be a cadence in that new key in order to confirm that switch of key. There are two different ways that Mr. Bach does this. He does this using either a pivot chord in the middle of a phrase, or by switching key right at the beginning of the next phrase. So let's say we're moving along and all of a sudden we want to switch to a new key. What we would see is we would see accidentals in the new key. So what you would want to do is use a pivot chord prior to that new key to help show the difference between the old key and the new key. And this is what we would use, a pivot chord symbol that looks like this, where the harmony would go for the first key up to here, then the new key would be here, and then you would put of X, Y, or Z there. But then the interesting thing is, whichever music is occurring where the accidentals of the new key have not started yet, but there is a common chord between the old key and the new key. It might be 2 of the old key and 6 of the new key. That pivot chord helps to transition between the old scale you're in and the new scale you're going to be going into. And then at the end, there will be some kind of 5/7 to 1 cadence of the new key. to confirm that change. Now, after a fermata in Mr. Bach's music, sometimes a modulation occurs directly. We call that a direct modulation, where there's no pivot chord. It just starts in that new scale. So then what we would do there is say, okay, we're going to go into the key of A major, and then the accidentals are all included, and we just start in that new key. That's a fairly common occurrence in Mr. Bach's music as well. So the important thing to take away from this tutorial is to always keep track of the accidentals in the music that you're using, either analyzing or writing, and also to know that tonicization, or also known as secondary dominant chords, are fairly common, but also modulation is fairly common as well. And it's important to know the two different ways to modulate, either by using a pivot chord in the middle of a phrase, or by modulating right after the fermata in the beginning part of a new phrase. These two elements are common within almost all of Mr. Bach's chorale writing. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you learned some new things, and I hope that this material was helpful for you. I did not get into too many specifics, because if you think of these general ideas as little nutshell ideas to think about and use commonly in all the harmony questions you'll be working on, you'll see how this material is a really good way to spark your energy and to help you to recognize and see how these concepts can be applied in different ways, but also how the difference between tonicization and modulation is consistent. Thank you for watching. See you next time. If you have a chance to like and subscribe, and if you want to make a comment, please feel free to do so. Until next time, bye for now.